Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for a study of the commentary on Habakkuk. On this study, you'll note that today we are going to be using the Dead Sea Scrolls Study Edition by Martinez Ticlear in 1999 because unfortunately, my favorite translation, the new translation by Wise, Abegg, and Cook, is not available digitally. So, we will be going back and forth. So I will be reading from the digital form, but I will also be going back and forth with my favorite translation. If you want to follow along, I will go over some differences between the two, but I will also be explaining how there might be some differences that are good or bad. I do personally enjoy the commentary by Wise, Abegg, and Cook, so on occasion I will be reading from their introductions of different parts of Habakkuk. Now you can pronounce it Habakkuk or Habakkuk. I'm not sure exactly the correct way, but sometimes I say it one way, sometimes I say it another. Well, anyway, let's get started and bear with me. I am learning a new presentation system and I am not technically sound, so if I fumble around, please excuse my mess. All right, let's get started. Today we are going to be introducing the teacher of righteousness, the wicked priest, the man of the lie, the Kittim, the Chaldeans, the cruel Israelites. So these are all names or people groups that we are going to come in contact with. And if you're following along with my other studies, you'll note that I highlight in a couple of different colors. If it is in blue, it's probably because it's matching one of these people or people groups. If it is in yellow, it's just a general highlight, something I might talk about a little bit more. And then if it's in green, then it is establishing something that perhaps is prophecy. And so those are my three main colors that you will see throughout my presentation. All right. So first things first is we are going to Habakkuk 1 through 5. So throughout this lesson, we're going to be going back and forth with the actual Habakkuk because only parts of it is in this commentary. So I do want you to have the full aspect to be able to look at both parts. So let's take a look. We are going to start with Habakkuk 1 through 5. And it says, "The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear? Or cry to you violence, and you will not save? How do you make me see iniquity? And why do you idly look at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contentions arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded. For I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if you were told." All right, so we have the first 5 verses here, and we are going to be following along. If you have Wise, Abegg, and Cook, I actually have the page numbers here on the right-hand side. And again, this is not Wise, Abegg, and Cook, most likely that you are seeing here on the screen, unless I do show you when I am switching to their information. All right, so let's read this commentary. And again, these commentaries are brought to us by the Zadokite priesthood, the scribes who were living in Qumran, in and around the area. So we will be hearing from them personally in their interpretation to the document, or the document of Habakkuk. But before I get to read the first 5 verses here in the commentary, we are going to actually read the introduction that wise Abegg and Cook gave us. So here we go, and this is not on your screen. I'm just reading it from the book. Almost all the Dead Sea Scrolls that are not themselves copies of the biblical books are still connected in some way with the scriptures of Israel. The poetic compositions, however creative, are still suffused with biblical phrases. The legal texts are based openly or implicitly on scriptural precedents, and narratives of the past or predictions of the future are retellings or refashioning of sacred stories or prophecies. The biblical connection comes to expression most clearly in texts that specifically attempt to explain or decipher biblical texts. Sometimes the ancients explained the text by rewriting or paraphrasing it, as in the tales of the patriarchs or the words of Moses. Often, though, they simply commented on the Bible verse by verse. Sometimes the texts under consideration are chosen because of their relevance to a particular theme, as in the last days, which consists of the explanation of verses about Israel's future destiny. Sometimes continuous passages or books are treated in order, as in the present text, as the commentary on Habakkuk. It is very characteristic of the Dead Sea sect that they often considered the Bible a puzzle to be solved or an enigma to be unraveled. Its characteristic word for activity of interpretation was pesher, which as a rule refers to the interpretation of dreams. The biblical Daniel serves as an ideal interpreter of this type. He interpreted dreams and visions, the handwriting on the wall, not through native ability, but because Elohim has revealed the secrets to him. The Qumran scribes understood their task in the same way to penetrate the secrets of Scripture, not through reflection on the text itself, but through openness to the revelation of Elohim. The result of this activity is a series of commentaries, perhaps interpretations is a better word, that themselves often partake of unreality of dreams. The writers saw their own group's history in the words of Scripture, foretold long ago, but are cautious about naming names. Instead, they use symbolic titles with biblical overtones: the teacher of righteousness, the wicked priest, the man of the lie. When they find those characters in the word of the Bible, the disconcerting outcome is not a decoded message, but one code translated into another code. The commentary on Habakkuk was among the first cache of scrolls from Cave 1, and has itself been the subject of several commentaries. The first step is understanding the commentary is to understand the background of the original book. Habakkuk delivered his prophecy in the 6th century BC. His native Judah was then threatened by two forces, Chaldeans or Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, who were then in the process of conquering the small kingdoms of the Near East. An internal religious strife between the pious worshippers of Yahweh and the ungodly. The main thrust of the biblical books is to answer where Elohim is in the midst of the misery and whether there is a divine plan. The Qumran writer uses the biblical book as a pattern to understand his own times. As in the biblical book, Israel is again threatened by a foreign power, not the Chaldeans this time, but a group he calls the Kittim, or Westerners. In the opinion of most scholars today, the Romans. And again, Israel is suffering from internal strife between the wicked and the pious, exemplified by the conflict between the teacher of righteousness and his opponents, the man of the law and the wicked priest. All of the statements in the first two chapters of Habakkuk are made to refer to the circumstances. The third chapter, consisting of hymns of praise, is not included in the commentary. The modern attempt to decode the Qumran recording of Habakkuk has centered on the identification of the Kittim. As noted, most now agree that the Kittim are the Romans and their arrival in Israel, so dreaded by the writer of the commentary, in fact took place around 63 BC. The commentary must have been written around that time, and at least carbon 14 tests, in fact, point to the 1st century BC as the period of when the Cave 1 copy was made. The paleographical date places the scroll late in the 1st century BC, and the activity of the teacher, the priest, and the man of the lie also belong to this period is still disputed. Now, what's interesting here is that this is, again, through the eyes of Zabeg and Cook, and I'm not sure if they are believers in our Messiah, but a lot of things that they will interpret will state that they are unsure of who these specific people are. If you've been following along with me, the teacher of righteousness is our Messiah himself. However, the wicked priest and the man of the lie, we're going to dig through who they are here in Habakkuk today, so we know who the teacher of righteousness is. There are other times where it's just the mention of the teacher. They have the overseer of their group in Qumran, and oftentimes he is referred to as the priest or the teacher, but when it's specifically talking about the teacher of righteousness, we know who our Messiah is. But we'll dig a little bit deeper. All right, let's get started. So we have Habakkuk 1 through 5, we just read, says, the oracle received by the prophet Habakkuk in a vision. For how long, Yahuwah, do I ask for help without you hearing me? Do I shout violence to you without you saving me? So again, we hear the sadness on, in Habakkuk's voice, right? How dare you let me sit here and listen to this? This reminds me of Psalms. Let's take a look. How long, O Yahuwah, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long am I to feel anxious in my soul, with grief in my heart all the day? How long will my enemy be exalted over me? We hear that same anxiousness in our own David in the Psalms 13, 1 through 2. We also hear the same thing in Jeremiah. Let me find here. Whoops. My mouse. There we go. I'm going to show you Jeremiah chapter, let's go to 9. And let's read some of Jeremiah's pleas with the Father. Oh, that my head were waters and my eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of the daughter of my people. Oh, that I had in the desert a traveler's lodging place, that I might leave my people and go away from them. For they are all adulterers, a company of treacherous men. They bend their tongue like a bow. Falsehood and not truth has grown strong in the land. For they proceed from evil to evil, and they do not know me, declares Yahuwah. Let everyone beware of his neighbor, but put no trust in any brother. For every brother is a deceiver, and every neighbor goes about as a slanderer. Everyone deceives his neighbor and no one speaks the truth. And it goes on and it goes on, how sad Jeremiah was. Let's go back here. The interpretation of this concerns the beginning of the generation, which will come upon them, blank. They will shout against, blank. Why do you show me misdeeds, and do you behold toil? The interpretation, so every time it says the interpretation is this. This is when the Zadokite priest is giving his interpretation to what he has just read. The interpretation of this, Elohim with persecution and betrayal. You set destruction and violence in front of me, and brawls occur, and quarrels arise. The interpretation of this, blank, robbery of blank and brawls, blank, argument, and they think destruction. For the law falls into abeyance. The interpretation of this, that they have rejected the law of Elohim. So we know that this strife that is being caused is by people who reject his laws. And justice does not emerge as the winner, for the evil doer accosts the upright man. Its interpretation is the evildoer is the wicked priest. So here's that wicked priest. And the upright man is a teacher of righteousness. This is why justice emerges distorted. The interpretation of this, and not blank. Look, traitors, and behold, be astonished, shocked, for in your time a work is done which you would not believe if you were told. It's not finished there. So we know the wicked priest is the evildoer. Now we know there is a main evildoer, and he has a whole lot of minions, right? All right, let me move along here. All right, so here is that next verse, and I have this one from a new translation. They are the cruel Israelites. So again, this is in blue, another one. So we have the teacher of righteousness, we have the wicked priest, and now we have the cruel Israelites. They are the cruel Israelites who will not believe when they hear everything that is to come upon the latter generation that will be spoken by the priest, in whose heart Elohim has put the ability to explain all the words of his servants the prophets, through whom Elohim has foretold everything that is to come upon his people and the Gentiles. So I have this in green because this is talking about a future, right? This is a prophecy. But I also have the cruel Israelites in blue. These are a group of people we need to look into. Over here on the right-hand side, it says the cruel Israelites is one of their own, right? Because Israelites, that's who they are, but it's one of their own. And here is a little excerpt from the commentaries on Psalms. And if you're following along with the new translation, it is on page 249. And it says, the wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth against him. But Yahweh laughs at him, for he knows this day is coming. Psalms 37, 12 through 13. This refers, again, this is another commentary by a Zadokite priest. This refers to the cruel Israelites in the house of Judah. So the cruel Israelites are those in the house of Judah. Very interesting. Who plot to destroy those who obey the law, who are in the party of the Yahad. But Elohim will not leave them in their power. Have any of you heard of the Noahide laws? This makes me think of the Noahide laws that have been given by whom I would call the cruel Israelites the house of Judah. And if you aren't familiar with the Noahide laws, I suggest that you go and take a look. I'm not sure where y'all stand in terms of researching this, but it's a topic that if you haven't looked into, I think you really should. I probably can't mention a lot here, but I will say that the current president has had many instances with rabbis confirming that he will indeed institute the Noahide laws. So find out what they are and why you should be prepared. This is what I believe is being spoken of here. We are living in the end times, the last days, in my opinion, and this is something that will be coming up in the future. All right, back to this presentation here. We're going to be talking about what I have highlighted here in green. Again, it's a prophecy of a priest in whose heart Elohim has put the ability to explain all the words of his servants his servants, the prophets. So who had the ability or has the ability to explain the words of his servants, the prophets? You can see, obviously, I gave you the answer right there. It's our Yahusha, right? He came. Sorry, I recorded this earlier and found out that my sound wasn't working. So I might mute once in a while to clear my throat. My apologies. So we know this is Yahusha. All right. So we have heard the Chaldeans, the Katims, the wicked priest. They're all connected. The Chaldeans are a group of people that are ascribed to have been of Assyrian descendants. And they have also converted. We know when Rome came around and their religion, they came around, they gave people ultimatums to change their beliefs into theirs, and a lot did go along with Rome. So how the Assyrians became Romans is interesting. If you want to study, go ahead and do that. So then we have, where is Rome today? Well, if we look at the Katim are mentioned in several apocalypses. The book of Daniel talks about the king of the north invading the king of the south. So the Katim, however, this is not the original meaning. Original Katim refer to the inhabitants of Cyprus. All right, but I'm going to scroll down. I'm kind of just showing you where I got this article. One of many. So similar identifications can be found in the oldest Parashim, or Peshar, which is what we learned. I guess you're not seeing that. Hold on just a second. All right, so back up to the top here. Katim are mentioned in several apocalypses in Daniel. And so I'm going down here and I'm just scrolling through here, and it talks about how they came from Cyprus. And it's mentioned in the War Scroll in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it talks about the king of the Katim who returns from Egypt and passes through Judea on his way back to the north. And they say it's clearly talking about a Seleucid king. We know that there are multiple meanings. Again, Habakkuk was writing in his day, describing people and groups, things that were going on in his day, but he's talking to a different generation, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So it says, similar identifications can be found in the Parashim, or the Peshar, Hebrew text in Aramaic, the Pesher on the Apocalypse of Weeks, the Pesher Isaiah, and the Pesher Habakkuk. Obviously, that's where we are today, and Nahum. Katim refers to the Romans. So again, we're seeing that it is talking about the Romans. Let me go over here. Sorry. I'll get there. Folks, I'm learning OBS today. So bear with me. All right. And then we have the Assyrians. When they converted, they took on a different religion. And let's take a look at that one. Discover the fascinating history of the Chaldean Christians. And if you've been following along with me for any period of time, you understand that the term Christian is very wide, very broad, right? Well, this is because the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, took that as their title, their belief system. And the Assyrians, the Katim, combined together with the Chaldeans, call themselves Christian. Very interesting. And it says the well-known Christian groups such as the Catholics, the Orthodox, and the Protestants, they're all connected. So this is why I urge people to reevaluate if you want to be called a Christian. Although I love my Christian roots and heritage, not heritage, but my lifespan in Christianity. It got me where I am. However, I will no longer go under that name. Moving right along. So the Chaldean Christians have preserved their identity. There are approximately 500,000 Chaldean Christians scattered around the earth. And what do you know? I actually looked that up, and I believe one of the biggest majority of Chaldeans and Chaldean Christian groups are in America. Quite interesting. So who are they? You know, it says they belong to an Eastern Catholic Church and are primarily native speakers of Aramaic. They originate from Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq, and can be traced back as far as the 16th century. We know that the Chaldeans actually go farther back. The religious practices combines features of both Eastern Orthodox and Western Catholic traditions. Obviously, we know that Rome, the Qumran, and their religion is Catholicism. So that is where we are with who these people groups are that we are talking about today. All right, so moving along, we see that Rome is the church, right? Rome and the church go hand in hand. Well, we are talking about the enemies of the teacher of righteousness. Anyone who is against the teacher of righteousness are those people or groups who go the way of the nations. So the Chaldeans, the Qumran, and the cruel Israelites are all part of the broad spectrum of nations who all ignore his ways, unfortunately. All right, so now we are going to move along to Habakkuk 1, 5 through 9, and I will read that for you. Look among the nations and see, wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up Chaldeans, the bitter and nasty, I call them nasty, hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press on proudly. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like the sand. All right, so the Qumran are coming, right? They're coming from all over the place. All right, let's read the commentary. And again, if you're following along in Wise, Abegg, and Cook, you're on page 81. It is reported the interpretation of the word concerns the traders of the man of the lie. Another blue highlight, another character. Since they do not believe in the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mouth of Elohim. So again, it's black and white, folks. It's one side or the other. And the man of the lie, the wicked priest, the cruel Israelites, they're all on the same page together. They might all be different people groups, but ultimately they're all coming against the Father, right? And it concerns the traders of the new covenant, since they did not believe in the covenant of Elohim and dishonored his holy name. Likewise, the interpretation of the word concerns traitors in the last days. So again, traitors, right? Those who despise the law. They are violators of the covenant, who will not believe when they hear all that is going to happen to the final generation. Okay, so here's talking about the final generation. All of this information is for a future generation. So the Zadokite priests knew and understood that Habakkuk was writing for a future generation. And they are also writing for the future generation so that we can understand what Habakkuk is truly meaning here. All right, let's see here. Let's see. They are violators of the covenant who will not believe when they hear all that is going to happen to the final generation from the mouth of the priest whom Elohim has placed within the community. So there is a priest, a good priest. This is a good priest, not the wicked priest, the leader, to foretell the fulfillment of all the words of his servants, the prophets. Now remember, who was that? Who was that priest? Well, it was the teacher of righteousness. It's our Messiah, right? Okay, so by means of whom Elohim has declared all that is going to happen to his people Israel. For see, I will mobilize the Chaldeans, a cruel and determined people. So here it's the same term, cruel, is being referred to the Chaldeans. And the same one, cruel Israelites, cruel Chaldeans, they're all on the same team, right? Its interpretation concerns the Kittim. So we have the Kittim, the Chaldeans. I mean, it's over and over. He's telling us who the enemy is, right? They are swift and powerful in battle, to slay many blank in the kingdom of the Kittim. They will take possessions of many countries and will not believe in the precepts of Elohim. They go across the earth to take possession of dwellings not theirs. We've seen that before in scripture, taking dwellings that are not belonging to them. Its interpretation. This refers to the traitors with the man of the lie, because they have not obeyed the words of the teacher of righteousness from the mount of Elohim. It also refers to the traitors to the new covenant, because they did not believe in Elohim's covenant and desecrated his holy name. And finally, it refers to the traitors of the last days. So the man of the lie is a traitor who doesn't believe in the words of the teacher of righteousness or his covenant, and those who desecrates his name. So who do you know desecrates his name? Think about that. We know all of our Masoretic texts all say Lord, right? Desecrating his name, not giving him his name. And then we know that there is a people group who refuse to say his name, right? All right. So we are now in column 3, Habakkuk 1, 6 through 10. Let me take you there. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans. I know we just read part of this, but I'm going to repeat it. A bitter and hasty nation who march through the breadth of the earth and seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than evening wolves. Their horses press proudly on, and their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle, swift to devour. They all come for violence, with their faces forward. So this is part I just read. And it says, they gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff. At the rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. So these are groups of people who are taking things that don't belong to them, right? Right. All right, moving back here. Column 3 and verse 1. And they will advance over the plain, destroy and pillage the cities of the country. For this is what he has said in Habakkuk 1 verse 6, to take possession of dwellings not theirs. Habakkuk 1:7, it is dreadful and terrible. His judgment and his exaltation arise from himself. The interpretation concerns the Kittim, the fear and dread of whom are on all the peoples. All of their thoughts are premeditated to do evil. And with cunning and treachery they behave towards all the nations. Their horses are swifter than panthers, and they are keener than wolves at night. Their war horses paw the ground, gallop from afar. They come flying like an eagle. Some versions say vulture. Hastening to eat. Habakkuk 1:9. All of them come to us, all of them come to use violence, the breath of their faces like the east wind. Its interpretation concerns the Kittim, who trample the land with their horses and their animals and come from far off, from the islands of the sea, to devour all the nations like an eagle, insatiable. With fury they are heated, and with burning wrath and livid faces they will speak to all the nations. For this is what he has said in verse 9, Habakkuk 1:9. The breath of their faces is like the east wind, and he gathers captives like the sand. Its interpretation, blank, and we don't have the rest, unfortunately, there. I'm going to bring up a different verse here, Isaiah 10:20 through 7. Let's take a look. In that day, so again, anytime it says in that day, we know we're talking about Judgment Day. In that day, the remnant of Israel and the survivors of the house of Jacob will no more lean on him who struck them, but will lean on Yahweh, the Holy One of Israel, in truth. A remnant will return, the remnant of Jacob, to the mighty Elohim. For though your people Israel be as the sand of the sea, only a remnant of them will return. Destruction is decreed, overflowing with righteousness. For Elohim of hosts will make a full end, as decreed in the midst of all the earth. Therefore, says Yahweh of hosts, O my people who dwell in Zion, be not afraid of the Assyrians, when they strike us with the rod and lift up their staff against you as the Egyptians did. For in a very little while my fury will come to an end, and my anger will be directed to their destruction. And Yahweh of hosts will wield against them a whip, as when he struck Midian at the rock of Horeb. On his staff will be over the sea, and he will lift it as he did in Egypt. And in that day his burden will depart from your shoulder, and his yoke from your back, and the yoke will be broken because of the fat. So here he is telling us that it's okay. Don't worry about these Assyrians that are going to come. So we have a promise in prophecy of Isaiah. All right, let me go to the next page. We are in Habakkuk 1:9 through 13, and that says, They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like the sand, and kings scoff, and rulers they laugh. They laugh at the fortresses, they pile up the earth and take it, and they sweep by like a wind and go on, guilty men, whose own might is their Elohim. So this is something that we're going to look into here. Their own might is their God. All right. Are you not from everlasting, O Yahweh, my Elohim, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Yahweh, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You, who are of purer eyes than to see evil, and cannot look at wrong, why do you idly look at traitors, and remain silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? Again, this is the cry of Habakkuk, just like we saw in the cry of David, when all of our enemies surround, right? All right. All right, let's read. And it says, it sneers and leaders it mocks. Its interpretation is they deride the powerful and despise the honored men. At kings and princes they jeer and sneer at a huge army. Habakkuk 1:10, and he laughs at every strong fortress, piles up the earth and captures it. The interpretation of this concerns the leaders of Kittim, who despise the fortresses of the peoples, and with derision laugh at them. They surround them with a huge army to capture them, and through dread and fear they surrender to their hands, and they demolish them because of the wickedness of those who dwell in them. Then Habakkuk 1:11 says, the wind changes and goes on, and this one has his might, his Elohim, his God. So he has made his might his Elohim, his God. Its interpretation concerns the leaders of the Kittim, who, on the advice of the house of the guilty people, go by one before the other. Their leaders, one after another, will come to raise the earth. And this one has made his might his God. Its interpretation, all the nations, blank. We don't have that interpretation, unfortunately. Are you not from of old, Yahuwah, my holy Elohim? We will not die, Yahuwah. All right. We're going to go to Habakkuk 1:12 through 16. So I just read that part here. Are you not from everlasting, O my Elohim, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Yahweh, you have ordained them as judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil, and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and remain silent when the wicked swallows up a man more righteous than he? This is the new part here. You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his dragnet, so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore, he sacrifices his net and makes offerings to his dragnet. For by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. So we heard the Kittim thought that their might, their strength is their Elohim, their God. Now we have people rejoicing so much over their net that they're making offerings to their nets, right? Interesting. All right, let's take a look at Habakkuk 1:12 through 16 commentary. You have appointed him to judge. Rock, you have installed him to rebuke him. Your eyes are too pure to look at evil. You cannot stare at calamity. This next part's in green because it includes a prophecy. The interpretation of the word Elohim is not to destroy his nation at the hand of the peoples, but in the hand of his chosen ones. Elohim will place a judgment over all the peoples. And by their reproof, all the evildoers of his people will be pronounced guilty by the reproof of those who kept his commandments. So it's telling us that there's a group of people who are going to have the last say, right? Let's take a look. Isaiah 49:22 through 23 says, Thus says Yahweh your Elohim, behold, I will lift up my hand to the nations, and raise my signal to the peoples, and they shall bring your sons in their arms, and your daughters shall be carried on their shoulders. Kings shall be your foster fathers, and their queens your nursing mothers. With their faces to the ground, they shall bow down to you, and lick the dust of your feet. Then you will know that I am Yahweh. Those who wait for me shall not be put to shame. Wow. So he's giving us a promise that even though we're going to be going through these hard times by these groups of people, by the evil one, by the adversary, there is a promise here. So that's a wonderful promise in Isaiah. All right. For those who keep his commandments in their hardship. Okay. So we know it's hard. All right. For this is what he has said, Habakkuk 1:13. Your eyes are too pure to look at evil. Its interpretation. They have not run after their desire of their eyes in the era of wickedness. So if you're trying to be an upright person, you're on the right path. During this era of wickedness, we're trying to not go after the desires of our flesh, right? All right, verse 1, verse 13. Why do you stare, traitors, and remain silent when a wicked person consumes someone more upright than himself? Its interpretation concerns the house of Absalom and the members of their council who kept silent when the teacher of righteousness was rebuked and did not help him against the man of the lie who rejected the law in the midst of their whole council. Folks, when our Messiah was here, there were people who kept silent when he was being rebuked. They did not help him against the adversary, right? These people who follow the man of the lie and the wicked priest are people who reject the law in the midst of their whole council. We know what council this is talking about, those who held counsel over our Messiah when he was here the first time. Habakkuk 1:14 through 16. And again, folks, Habakkuk was written obviously before our Messiah, right? All right. You made man like the fish of the sea, like a reptile to rule over it. All of them he hauls up with a fishhook, catches in his net, and gathers in his trowel. This is why he offers sacrifices to his net. This is why he rejoices and is happy and burns incense to his trough, since by them his portion is fat and food rich. All right. Let's move on to Habakkuk 1:16 through 2:2. Let me bring that up here. Therefore he sacrifices to his net. We got that part. Let me read on. And makes offerings to his dragnet, for by them he lives in luxury, and his food is rich. Is he then to keep on emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? So it's not a one-time thing. When the enemy comes after people, it's a continual process, right? He doesn't just catch what he wants and eats what he wants, devours what he wants, and stops there. He doesn't. He's offering things he's worshiping this net. He's excited about what this net is doing. So why would he stop there? He's going to continue killing nations forever. Habakkuk 2. I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me, and I will answer concerning my complaint. And Yahweh did answer me. Here's what Yahweh says. Write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. I really like this part. Habakkuk is told to write it down because those who find this information useful, they're going to run with it, right? How many of you have run with the word and are blessed by the word? All right. Let's read the commentary of, let's see here. I think the last page ended with some blanks, so this kind of seems to be starting off in an odd place, but it says, of the Kittim, and they gather their wealth with all their loot like fish of the sea. And what it says, Habakkuk 1:16, this is why he offers sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his trowel. Isn't that interesting? So we don't see people here in America offering sacrifices to inanimate objects or idols. It does happen worldwide. So we don't offer sacrifices to our nets. But how many people give credit to something or someone where credit is not due? Right? Let's take a look. James 1:17 says, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, in whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. Psalms 115:1. Not to us, O Yahweh, not to us, but to your name give glory, for the sake of your steadfast love and your faithfulness. We should be praising him for everything. Don't become vain and don't be putting yourself up on a pedestal. That's what our enemies do. All right? Let's go back up here. Its interpretations. They offer sacrifices to their standards, and their weapons are the object of their worship. Verse 16. Since by them his portion is fat and food rich. Its interpretation. They distribute their yoke and their burden, which is their food, among the peoples year after year, ravaging many countries. Verse 17. For this he continually unsheaths his sword to kill people without pity. Its interpretation concerns the Kittim, who will cause many to die by the edge of the sword. Youths, adults, old people, women, and children, not even children at the breast will they pity. Habakkuk 2, 1-2. I will stand firm in my sentry post. I will position myself in my fortress, and I will look out to see what he says to me and what he answers to my reproof. Yahweh answered me and said, write the vision, inscribe it on tablets, so they may run the one who reads it. Amen. All right, next, column number 7, page 84, Habakkuk 2, 3-4. Says, for still the vision awaits its appointed time. That would be Moedim. And it hastens to the end. It will not lie. For it seems slow, wait for it, but surely come, it will not delay. Behold, his soul is puffed up. It is not upright within him, but the righteous shall live by his faith. All right. So let's read here. And Elohim told Habakkuk to write what is going to happen to the last generation. Okay, so this is for the last generation. If you've read the book of Enoch, it also says for the last generations. Baruch and Ezra. Those are all for the last generation. Prophecy. They might be prophesying something in the immediate future for their time, but they also prophesy for the last generation, folks. Okay, so God told Habakkuk to write what was going to happen to the last generation, but he did not let him know the consummation of the era. He didn't reveal all of his secrets, right? And as for what he says, Habakkuk 2:2, so that may run the one who reads it. Its interpretation concerns the teacher of righteousness, to whom Elohim has made known all the mysteries of the words of his servants, the prophets. Habakkuk 2:3, for the vision has an appointed time, Moedim, it will have an end and not fail. Right? We all know that the end will come, and it's going to come as he says it's going to come. Its interpretation, the final age, again, this is in green if you're not watching the screen but listening along. Its interpretation, the final age, will be extended and go beyond all that the prophets say, because the mysteries of Elohim are wonderful. Habakkuk 2:3, though it may tarry, wait for it. It definitely has to come and will not delay. Its interpretation concerns the men of truth, those who observe the law, whose hands will not desert the service of truth when the final age is extended beyond them. Because all the ages of Elohim will come at the right time, as he established for them in the mysteries of his prudence. All right. This is very interesting, and I have a link here. Let me show you. Here we have the same verse, Habakkuk 2:3, and I looked it up in the interlinear, and it says, for yet the vision for an appointed time, that's the Moedim, but it will speak at the end and will not lie. Again, he's not going to lie. It's coming to fruition, right? Here's the key part I'm getting to. Though it tarries, wait for it, because surely it will come and not tarry. That's very interesting. It says it will tarry, but then it ends up with saying it will not tarry. Let's take a look at these words. The first one says, though it tarries, wait for it. That word is Strong's 4102, maha. And that word means delay, linger, stay, tarry, right? To question, to hesitate, to be reluctant. Okay? So it says, though it tarries, though it's delayed, might be reluctant to come, doesn't seem like it's coming fast enough, right? Wait for it, because surely it will not come, or surely it will come and it will not tarry. The last tarry in this sentence is Strong's 309. It's a completely different word. And that word is akar. It means to loiter, procrastinate, to fall behind, following later, right? To be behind, defer, delay, to slack. So even though it seems to hesitate or be reluctant, even though it seems like it's taking forever for him to come, he's not going to lie about it. He is coming. But he will not delay it. He's not going to go past his timing, because his timing is perfect. He's not procrastinating. He knows when he's coming, right? We are just impatient because we know that this situation that we're going through in life seems to be taking a long time. And there are people who mock us and say, yeah, your Messiah is not coming. What are you talking about? And he says, don't worry about what people are thinking. He's coming. He's coming. All right, let's continue. Habakkuk 2:4. See, it is conceited and does not give way, his soul within him. Its interpretation. They will double upon them and find no mercy at being judged. So, we know that those who are waiting for him, who are trying to be righteous, we know it's taking a while. He has promises. Let's take a look. The last days will be longer than expected. Let's take a look at what our Messiah tells us. Matthew 24:48 through 51. But if that wicked servant says to himself, my master is delayed, and begins to beat his fellow servants and eats and drinks with drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and put him with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. All right. So our Messiah says that people are going to think that he's not coming, or in some cases people think he already came, right? Very interesting. Habakkuk 2:4. But the righteous man will live because of their loyalty to him. Let me take a look here. This is the next verse. Habakkuk 2:4 says, behold, the proud is not upright, his soul in him, but the just by his faith shall live. And if you haven't learned this term right here, the just, a person who is just, look at this word. Let's take a look. Strong's 6662 is Zadok. Zadok. Righteous, just, lawful, righteous man, right? Zadok. We know the Zadok priesthood. Zadok is a righteous priest line, right? The Zadokites. That's the word that was given to those who follow Zadok, right? Quite interesting. Thought I'd just point that out there. All right. Let's see. The New Translation, by the way, in this interpretation, right at this spot here, in the New Translation, they say, this means that the last days will be much, much longer than the prophets had said, for Elohim's revelations are truly mysterious. So even the wise Abeg and Cook understand what they're trying to say here. And it's interesting because it says the days are going to be much, much longer than the prophets said. So we have the prophets for a reason. Did they lie? No. But we see up here that Habakkuk was given some information about the last generation, but he did not let him know the consummation of the era. So the Father has the timing plan. It might be a lot longer than even what the prophets thought, right? But his timing is perfect. Praise Yah. All right. Now we are in column 8, Habakkuk 2, 5 through 8. And let's see here. I have an introduction by the New Translation. So I'm going to read that here before I get going on. Let's see. The writer here contemplates the final judgment. How may one escape the wrath to come? By obedience to the law and loyalty to the teacher. It is not clear if the teacher here mentioned is the founder of the sect or a teacher who will appear later. The sect appeared to believe both in a present and future teacher of righteousness. Hallelujah, right? We know it's the teacher of righteousness is our Messiah. Whether they were one and the same is still debated. Well, not with me, right? The teacher's nemesis, the wicked priest, is here introduced because he was both priest. Sorry, I moved my microphone. It's making. Let's see. The teacher's nemesis, the wicked priest, is here introduced because he was both priest and also a ruler of Israel. Most scholars believe that he must have been one of the Hasmonean priest kings of the 2nd and 1st century BCE. He appears to have been originally a figure that the teacher and his followers could trust. He had a reputation for reliability, literally was called by the name of truth, but then proved to be proud, selfish, and greedy. Interesting. So let's take a look at what this commentary says here. Its interpretation concerns all observing the law in the house of Judah, whom Elohim will free from the house of judgment on account of their toil and their loyalty to the teacher of righteousness. How many of you know that there are people observing the law in the house of Judah and believe in the teacher of righteousness? I don't know too many. Currently, the house of Judah, we know those people who are over in Israel today, we don't see a lot of them following the teacher of righteousness, right? I'm sure that there are folks there who do, perhaps just not many, right? So let's take a look here and see a little bit more. Habakkuk 2, 5 through 6. Surely wealth will corrupt the boaster, and not will he last. He who widens his throat like the abyss, and he, like death, cannot be satisfied. All the peoples ally against him. All the nations come together against him. Are they not going to chant verses against him, explaining riddles at his expense? They shall say, Ah, one who amasses the wealth of others, how long will he load himself with debts? The interpretation concerns the wicked priest, who was called loyal at the start of his office. So this is what the writers, Wise, Abeg, and Cook said. So they are recognizing that this wicked priest was someone who was trusted at the beginning. All right. And they did say that it could have been a Hasmonean priest king in the century that Habakkuk lived, or during the time that this was written by the Zadokite priest. So, who does a wicked priest sound like to you? Someone who was loyal at first but rebelled? Okay, there's a lot of people who were loyal at first, right? Then they started going and doing their own thing, and I believe that again is in the house of Judah. It is the Kittim. So it's the Chaldeans, the wicked priest. Again, they are all in cahoots together. All right, column 9, Habakkuk 2, 7 through 11. Let's read this. Will not your debtors suddenly arise, and those who awake make you tremble? But you will be spoil for them, because you have plundered many nations. All of the remnant of the people shall plunder you for the blood of man and violence of the earth. To cities and all who dwell in them. Woe to him who gets evil gain for his house, to set his nest on high, to be safe from the reach of harm. You have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited life, for the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. All right. Let's take a look here at the commentary. Let me go back a page and see here. So it ended up with the interpretation of the word concerns the priests who rebelled the precepts of Elohim. Did I skip something? I think I did. I did. Let's go back here. Let's see. Its interpretation concerns a wicked priest who was called loyal at the start of his office. However, when he ruled over Israel, his heart became proud. He deserted Elohim and betrayed the laws. So I have some of these things underlined. Proud, betraying the laws for the sake of riches. And he robbed and hoarded wealth from the violent man who had rebelled against Elohim. And he seized public money, incurring additional serious sin. And he performed repulsive acts by every type of defiling impurity. Habakkuk 2, 7 through 8. Will not suddenly your creditors get up, and those who shake you wake up? You will be their prey. Since you pillaged many peoples, all the rest of the nations will pillage you. The interpretation of the word concerns the priests who rebelled the precepts of Elohim. All right. Afflicting him with the punishments of sin, the horrors of terrifying maladies they have acted upon him, as well as vengeful acts on his fleshly body. And what it says, Habakkuk 2:8, since you pillaged many people, all the rest of the nations will pillage you. And this next part is in green. Its interpretation concerns the last priest of Jerusalem, who will accumulate riches and loot from plundering the nations. However, in the last days, their riches and their loot will be given into the hands of the army of the Kittim, for they are the rest of the nations. So the Kittim, Chaldeans, cruel Israelites, wicked priests, all belong to the rest of the nations, right? Who were the last priests in Jerusalem? They were and are impostors of Yahweh's priests. They were traitors. Perhaps they had Israelite blood, but were no longer part of Israel because of their transgressions. They're the cruel Israelites, folks. Who are the leaders that are over there now? These people, right? Let's take a look at Revelation 2:9. It says, I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Revelation 3:9 says, Behold, I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say that they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow down before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. All right? So, obviously, we have the Father on our side against those who are coming to plunder us. If you haven't already looked into who is plundering, who owns the wealth of today, simple internet search, you will find companies that pretty much own everything, right? Take a look here. Banking, finance, retail. You're going to recognize some of these businesses. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but they're very familiar businesses that are owned by the wicked priest, the man of the lie, our adversary, the cruel Israelites. They own all of these things. Take a look. Media, they own it all. All right, I can go on and on with that. It's really simple to look that up. We can also see that I believe there are 12 companies. This one says 10. I've seen 10, 12, but they're all owned by the same groups. All of these recognizable companies, right? It definitely lets us know who owns the wealth, who owns the nations, right? All right. I'll move right along. Column 9, Habakkuk 2, 7 through 11. We've already read it, so I'm just going to go with the commentary portion. For the human blood spilt and the violence done to the country, the city, and all who dwell in it, its interpretation concerns the wicked priest, whom, for the wickedness against the teacher of righteousness and the members of his council, Elohim delivered into the hands of his enemies to disgrace him with a punishment, to destroy him with bitterness of soul, for having acted wickedly against his elect. Habakkuk 2:9. Woe to anyone putting ill-gotten gains in his house, placing his perch high up to escape the power of evil. You have planned things that will bring disgrace to your house, destroying many nations and sinning against your soul. For the stone will shout from the wall, the wooden beam will answer. The interpretation of the word concerns the priest who blank. I'll get back to that in just a moment. I have a side note here. I think it's very interesting when it talks about the stone shouting from the wall and the wooden beam answering. I think it's very interesting. Let's take a look. Luke 19:40. Let me read not the whole chapter, but let me go. Yahusha is talking to people, and they said, let's see, and they brought it to Yeshua, and throwing their cloaks on the colt, they set Jesus on it, and, is this the right one? This might not be the right. Let me try that again. 1940. Let's try that again. Pardon me. 1940. I was in the right spot. My goodness. All right. So this is after Yeshua got on the colt. It says, as he was drawing near, already on the way down the Mount of Olives, the whole multitude of his disciples began to rejoice and praise Elohim with a loud voice for all the mighty works that they had seen, saying, blessed is the King who comes in the name of Yahweh, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to him, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. And he answered, I tell you, if these were silent, the very stones would cry out. Again, that's the part that is being spoken of here, is if we're not going to say anything, the stones will cry out instead. And then I have another verse here, and that is 2 Ezra 5. I'm going to read a little bit. Nevertheless is coming the tokens. Behold, the days shall come, that they which dwell upon the earth shall be taken in a great number, and the way of truth shall be hidden, and the land shall be barren of faith. But iniquity shall be increased above that which now you see, and you have heard long ago. And the land that you see now has root, you shall see wasted suddenly. But if the Most High grant you to live, you shall see after the third trumpet, the sun shall suddenly shine again in the night, and the moon three times a day. And blood shall drop out of wood, and the stones shall give his voice, and the people shall be troubled. I find this very interesting when it talks about stone crying out and wooden beams answering. I don't know about you all, but this gets me thinking, and it says that it's gonna cause people to fear, right? So I'm wondering, side note, my little side note here, is this a Nephilim that are, I know that I've posted about the fact that I believe that some mountains and hills and things that look alike, they were petrified Nephilim. Will they come back at the end times? Not so sure. Just thought it was an interesting side note there. Moving along. All right, Habakkuk 2:10 through 14. It states, you have devised shame for your house by cutting off many peoples. You have forfeited your life. For the stone will cry out from the wall, and the beam from the woodwork respond. Woe to him who builds a town with blood and founds a city on iniquity. Behold, is it not from Yahweh of hosts that people labor merely for fire, and nations weary themselves for nothing? For the earth will be filled with the knowledge and the glory of Elohim as the waters cover the sea. Amen, right? Let's read the commentary. For its stones to be an oppression, and the beam of wood by pillage. And what it says in Habakkuk 2:10, destroying many nations and sinning against your soul. Its interpretation, it is the house of judgment. For Elohim will give his judgment among many nations, and from there will lead him to punishment. And in their midst he will proclaim him guilty, and will punish him with sulfurous fire. Habakkuk 2:12 through 13. Woe to him who builds a city with blood and founds a town on wickedness. Does this not stem from Yahweh of hosts, that the nations wear themselves out for fire and the people are exhausted for nothing? The interpretation of the word concerns the spreader of the lie, who has misdirected many, building a useless city with blood and erecting a community with deceit for his own glory, wearing out many by useless work and teaching them acts of deceit, so that their labors are for nothing, so that those who derided and insulted Elohim's chosen will go to the punishment of fire. Oh, wow, right? This is crazy. But this is what the enemy's goal is, right? And again, we know that he wears out the saints, right? All right, Habakkuk 2:14. For the earth will become full of knowledge of Yahweh's glory, just as water fills the sea. The interpretation of the word in his return blank. All right. Let's see. The lie. It just ends with the lie. All right. Habakkuk 2:15 through 16. Woe to him who makes his neighbors drink. You pour out your wrath and make them drunk in order to gaze on their nakedness. Keep that in mind right there. You will have your fill of shame instead of glory. Drink yourselves and show your uncircumcision. The cup of Yahweh's right hand, or his wrath, in other words, will come around to you, and utter shame will come upon your glory. Keep that nakedness in your brain for a second, because we're going to see something different here in the commentary. And this is from the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it's not the only place, and we'll look at this afterwards. Knowledge will be revealed to them as plentiful as the water in the sea. Habakkuk 2:15. Woe to anyone making his companion drunk, spilling out his anger, or even making him drunk to look at their nakedness. Is that what it says? No. Every Masoretic translation, let's see here. I believe in the Septuagint it also said nakedness. When I looked, I believe I looked there. Look at their festivals. In all the Dead Sea Scrolls, it actually says festivals or feast days. Interesting, right? Let's see here. I'm going to read something in just a moment. I'm getting ahead of myself because this is very important. It doesn't say nakedness anywhere else in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It all says, let's look at their feast days and their festivals. Let's see here. Its interpretation concerns the wicked priest who pursued the teacher of righteousness to consume him with the heat of his anger in the place of his banishment. Folks, where is the place of Yahusha's banishment? Think about this. In festival time, so it's literally talking about festival time, not nakedness, right? In festival time, during the rest of the Day of Atonement, he appeared to them to consume them and to make them fall on the day of fasting, the Sabbath of their rest. So why would it use the word, why do all translations use the word nakedness when it literally is talking about a festival in the next couple of sentences here? Very interesting. I should have had that capitalized, Day of Atonement, but anyway, this is really important, folks. I'm going to read this introduction from the New Translation, which, again, this is why I like these guys so much. All right, it says, the priest persecutes the teacher. This paragraph has been intensely studied for clues to identify both the priest and teacher. It appears that the teacher, after his rebuke, so where Messiah went after his death and resurrection, he went into exile. But the priest, wishing to finish off the teacher and his followers on the Day of Atonement. Okay, so where's his exile place, right? He went to New Jerusalem. He's building it, getting it ready, right? Since it is unlikely that the priest, if he were a high priest, would be hunting his enemies on that holy day, Day of Atonement, when he had important ritual duties to perform, the day referred to must have been celebrated according to the sectarian calendar. Yes, folks, the calendar is playing a role in the Habakkuk commentary right here and in the book of Habakkuk, right? They're noting here that there's two different calendars going on, folks. Let's take a look. This is obviously bringing excitement to me. So, in this festival time, during the rest of the Day of Atonement, he appeared to them to consume them and to make them fall on the day of fasting. Why would a wicked priest go after the teacher of righteousness on his high holy day. He'd be busy, right? So he's obviously attacking the teacher of righteousness and his group on their day of fasting, the Sabbath of their rest. What's interesting, a lot of people say that you don't have to fast on the Day of Atonement. Throughout the Dead Sea Scrolls, it talks about fasting on the Day of Atonement. Anyway, so the wicked priest is coming after the teacher of righteousness on his Day of Atonement, when they're resting, right? When they're fasting. Whew. All right, Habakkuk 2:16. You are more glutted with disgrace than with glory. Drink up also and stagger. The cup of Yahweh's right hand, or his wrath, will turn against you, and disgrace come upon your glory. Its interpretation concerns the priest whose disgrace exceeds his glory, because he did not circumcise his foreskin of his heart, and has walked on the paths of excessiveness to slake his thirst. But the cup of Elohim's anger will consume him, increasing his disgrace. And the pain blank, Habakkuk 2:17, for the violation of Lebanon will cover you, and the destruction of animals. All right. Habakkuk 2:17 through 20. Oh, I should go back here. It said, for the violation of Lebanon will cover you, and the destruction of animals will appall you, owing to the human blood and the violence done to the country, the city, and all who dwell there. All right. I'm going to stop there and pull up Habakkuk 2:17 through 20. The violence done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and as will the destruction of the beasts that terrified them. For the blood of man and violence to the earth, the cities and all who dwell in them. What profit is an idol when its maker has shaped it? A metal image, a teacher of lies. For its maker trusts in its own creation when he makes speechless idols. Woe to him who says to a wooden thing, awake, to a silent stone, arise. So here we have the wooden things and the stones rising. Very interesting. Can this teach? Behold, it is overlaid with gold and silver, and there is no breath in it. But Yahweh is in his holy temple. Let all the earth keep silence before him. All right. Let me see here. Let's see. The interpretation of the word concerns the wicked priest to pay him the reward for what he did to the poor. Because Lebanon is the council of the community, and the animals are the simple folk of Judah who observe the law. So it's interesting. So there are people in Judah, in the land today, who are observing the law, right? Simple folk and single-minded those are two different terms that are used to talk about those who observe the law. All right, let's see. Elohim will sentence him to destruction, exactly as he intended to destroy the poor. And as for what he says, Habakkuk 2:17, owing to the blood of the city and the violence done to the country. Sorry, I'm still clearing my throat. Its interpretation, the city is Jerusalem, in which the wicked priest performed repulsive acts and defiled the sanctuary of Elohim. We know this. This sounds very familiar in Ezekiel 23. So we have Ezekiel being taken over to the wall, right? Let me go down to 36. And Yahweh said to me, Son of man, will you judge Ohala and Oholibah? Declare to them their abominations, for they have committed adultery, and blood is on their hands. With their idols they have committed adultery, and they have even offered up to them for food the children whom they had borne to me. Moreover, this they have done to me. They have defiled my sanctuary on the same day and profaned my Sabbaths. For when they had slaughtered their children in sacrifice to their idols, on the same day they came into my sanctuary to profane it. And behold, this is what they did in my house. So we know that they're profaning everything, right? This is very sad, right? All of the things that are going on, right? Okay. These are people who are profaning everything. The violence done to the country are the cities of Judah, which he plundered of the possessions of the poor. Habakkuk 2:18. What use is the sculpture which the craftsman carves, or the cast effigy and sham oracle, in whom their craftsmen trust, to make dumb idols? The interpretation of the word concerns all the idols of the people which they made, to serve them, to bow down to them. But they will not save them on the day of judgment. Habakkuk 2:19-20. Woe, woe to anyone saying to wood, wake up, and to a silent stone, get up. Can it instruct? It is covered with gold and silver, but no spirit is at all therein. But Yahweh is in his holy temple. All right, column 13, Habakkuk 2:17-20, I already read, so I'm going to continue on here. Silence in his presence, all the world. Its interpretation concerns all the peoples which serve stone and wood. However, on the day of judgment, Elohim will destroy all the worshippers of idols and the wicked from the earth. So folks, by this time we should know that the wicked priest, is it a person or a group of people? I'm going to say he and they are all the imposters. If you agree with me, thumbs up. They are the imposters. They are the ones who left with the nations and deny the laws of Elohim. I'm going to take a look here at Ezekiel 8. Ezekiel is going to the temple here in the 6th year, in the 6th month, on the 5th day of the month. It says, I sat in my house with the elders of Judah. So Yahweh takes him to the wall, and he says, and he brought me to the entrance of the court. And when I looked, behold, there was a hole in the wall. Then he said to me, Son of man, dig in the wall. So I dug in the wall, and behold, there was an entrance. And he said to me, Go in, and see the vile abominations that they are committing here. So I went in and saw. And there engraved on the wall all around was every form of creeping things and loathsome beasts, and all the idols of the house of Israel. And before them stood 70 men and the elders of the house of Israel, and Jaazaniah, the son of Shaphan, standing among them. Each had a censer in his hand, and the smoke of the cloud of incense went up. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the dark, each in his room of pictures? For they say, Yahweh does not see us, and Yahweh has forsaken the land. They said also to me, you will still see greater abominations that they commit. So here we have Ezekiel looking at what the house of Israel is looking at and doing. Again, the cruel Israelites, the house of Judah, of those who aren't following his commandments and his ways and are seeking after idols. These are the imposters. All right, this last verse here that I have, it might not even come up. Let me try that again, and it is Jeremiah. Let me try that here. My Jeremiah. checked all my links, but here we go. Jeremiah 23, 10 through 12 says, "For the land is full of adulterers, for because of swearing, by swearing the land mourneth. The pleasant places of the wilderness are dried up, and their course is evil, and their force is not right. For both prophet and priest are profane. Yea, in my house have I found their wickedness, says Yahweh. Wherefore their way shall be unto them as slippery ways in the darkness. They shall be driven on and fall therein, for I will bring evil upon them, even the year of their visitation, saith Yahweh." So he knows. You can't hide what he is doing, right? We can't think that he's not looking at us and knowing what we're doing in the dark. It's not hidden from him. So, what group are you going to be on? I'm sure you've already made that choice, right? We want to seek the righteous path, right? We want to seek the way. Well, this is the end of the commentary on Habakkuk. As I read in the introduction, the commentary did not include anything from Habakkuk 3, but it is a beautiful prayer, and so I want to end with Habakkuk 3. A prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, according to Shigionoth. O Yahweh, I have heard the report of you and your work. O Yahweh, do I fear? In the midst of the years, revive it. In the midst of the years, make it known. In wrath, remember mercy. Elohim came from Teman, and the Holy One from Mount Paran. His splendor covered the heavens, and the earth was full of his praise. His brightness was like the light. Rays flashed from his hand, and there he veiled his power. Before him went pestilence, and plague followed at his heels. He stood and measured the earth. He looked and shook the nations. Then the eternal mountains were scattered. The everlasting hills sank low. His were the everlasting ways. I saw the tents of Cushan in affliction. The curtains of the land of Midian did tremble. Was your wrath against the rivers, O Yahweh? Was your anger against the rivers, or your indignation against the sea? When you rode on your horses, or your chariot of salvation, you stripped the sheath from your bow, calling for many arrows. You split the earth with rivers. The mountains saw you and writhed. The raging waters swept on. The deep gave forth its voice. It lifted its hands on high. The sun and moon stood still in their place, and the light of your arrows as they sped, at the flash of your glittering spear. You marched through the earth in fury. You threshed the nations in anger. You went out for the salvation of your people, for the salvation of your anointed. You crushed the head of the house of the wicked, laying him bare from thigh to neck. You pierced with his own arrows the heads of his warriors, who came like a whirlwind to scatter me. Rejoicing as if to devour the poor in secret, you trampled the sea with your horses, the surging of mighty waters. I hear, and my body trembles. My lips quiver at the sound. Rottenness enters into my bones. My legs tremble beneath me, yet I will quickly wait for the day of trouble to come upon the people who invade us. Though the fig tree should not blossom, nor fruit be on the vines, the produce of the oil fail, and the fields yield no food, the flock be cut off from the fold, and there be no herd in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in Yahweh. I will take joy in the Elohim of my salvation. Elohim, the Master, is my strength. He makes my feet like the deer's. He makes me tread on high places. To the choir master with stringed instruments. So that is a beautiful prayer, praise with quite a bit of prophecy, right? All right. Thank you for joining me on this adventure of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Again, be sure to test everything and take a look at different versions of the word and look at the different Dead Sea Scrolls, you're going to get some revelations, I think. Be sure to look into definitions of words and meanings. You might find discrepancies, and you might actually find some good clarifications as well. I hope that I have encouraged you to dig deeper and to find the path to the righteous way, seeking the way. So until next time, be blessed.